Given you're in the middle of the election campaign, of course, it is a pretty dire picture for the Kiwi economy. Of course, and Treasury doesn't expect growth to return to pre-pandemic levels until 2022. When we spoke to you back in April, you really downplayed the prospects of engaging in, alternative options like helicopter money, direct money to households, as well as direct monetary financing by the central bank. Is it time to reconsider those options now?
Well, no, I don't think so, because obviously these figures are backward looking, and clearly the second quarter here has been a very difficult one for all of us. But we took an approach to have a fairly strict set of lockdown rules, and that's played out in the June quarter numbers. What we also have seen, though, is that in July and August, a significant rebound, and our New Zealand Activity Index actually for July was 2% above where it was in July 2019. So what we're now seeing is the economy, using the robustness that we have and the resilience we have in the economy coming back really strongly. And obviously we've been able to operate at a much lower levels of restrictions over the last few months, and our exports are holding up. And so, our economy is looking strong through this period. Since we spoke in April, we've continued to deliver our wage subsidy program, which ended up paying out around 13 billion New Zealand dollars, supporting about 1.7 million New Zealanders to stay and work. So there's been plenty of investment from us, plenty of stimulus money going in across the economy, and now we're moving into much more positive territory in the September quarter.
And yet the RBNZ is very actively considering negative rates, and there are some parts of the market that are considering that could happen as early next year. Do you have any concerns about negative rates for the country?
Well, I think, obviously our monetary policy in New Zealand is set independently by our Reserve Bank, and they've provided that clear certainty to the market by saying they won't be moving the rate from the official cash rate from 0.25, at least until March next year. Between now and then, we've got to see the economy stabilise and, as I say, rebound strongly through these next couple of quarters, and they'll no doubt take that into account as they go forward. Right around the world, what we used to call unconventional monetary policy is very much front and centre. There's been, fair degree of quantitative easing here in New Zealand that the bank's undertaken. The markets are liquid. Things are going reasonably well in the financial markets here. So, I think they'll bear all of that in mind when they come to think about their decisions post-March next year.
Will that be enough time, and could it compromise some of the things that you're doing, given the negative rates will pressure banks' profitability? They would be less willing to lend during this downturn.
Yeah, as I say, we have a very stable banking system in New Zealand, and the banks have found their way through this period well. They are lending at reasonably large amounts into the economy, supported, as we say, by the role of our Reserve Bank in the secondary market. So at the moment, they're doing well, and as long as the economy continues to do that, New Zealand will be in a strong position. Monetary and fiscal policy have worked well together through this period of time in New Zealand, and I'd like to see that continue.
Would it help your efforts if the RBNZ further delays its plans to raise capital requirements for banks?
Yeah, so they made a decision to delay those through to July next year. The banks themselves have remained strong. Their balance sheets are strong and historically have been so. And so to me, that seems like the appropriate decision for the Reserve Bank to have made. July, gives us even further room for the economy to solidify. And it's important that we have best practice in our banking here in New Zealand.
You don't see that being extended?
That would be a matter for the Reserve Bank to decide. At this point, I have seen no indication they're planning to do that.
Minister, are you worried about the optics should negative rates happen next year? What does it signal to the international investor, for example, about the strength of the Kiwi economy? And is it a concern that it signals a point where we've run out of ammo? The RBNZ and policymakers have run out of truly extraordinary options from there on forwards.
Well, New Zealand's not alone in the challenges that a 1 in 100-year shock provide, both to the fiscal and the monetary side of things. So that will, those will be issues that the central bank bears in mind as they work their way through the next period of time. New Zealand economy is a robust economy, and our exports are up. We're seeing good levels of investment into New Zealand from both overseas and here domestically. So, I think there's an awful lot that changes in a very short period of time in the era of COVID. But I think, by the time we get to the beginning of next year, people will see how the New Zealand economy has gone. The rating agencies continue to view us favourably. They know that we have a strong balance sheet and a disciplined approach from fiscal point of view. So I think there's an awful lot of water to go under the bridge before decisions from the Reserve Bank next year.
When do you envisage borders might reopen? Do you imagine that you've got a date where you'll let in foreign students, for example, tourists? Do you see, again, this idea of a travel bubble happening with Australia?
Yeah, so we're working towards the idea of some international students returning at the beginning of 2021. Clearly, it won't be at the volumes that we've had in New Zealand in the past, but we're working with that to see what we can enable there. The government recently announced that if we're re-elected, we will be creating a certain category of places for people to support economically significant activity here within our quarantine and isolation facility. We are continuing the policy work on that travel bubble with Australia. Resurgences on both sides of the sea that separate us have seen that work, the implementation of that work be delayed, but the policy work itself has gone ahead. And I think it's really important to bear in mind that through this period where we haven't had people travelling across our borders in such numbers, goods have continued, and New Zealand export prices have been very strong. Our volumes have and prices have in fact increased in a number of areas. And so, we continue to trade with the world, we continue to interact with the world, and as soon as it's possibly safe, we'll be opening those borders back up.
And Minister, thank you very much for joining us while you're having a busy morning. We understand that you're, of course, in the middle of a campaign, and in fact, you're cruising to an easy victory in October 17.
I'm glad you think so.
Well, will you seek even to form a coalition with the Green Party, even if you don't need them, given how much support it seems that your government has right now?
Yeah, well, obviously political polls are what they are, and you'll know that all politicians focus on one poll, and that's the one that occurs on the election day. But look, we've worked well with the Green Party through this period of government, and if they're there and we're there, then obviously there'll be an opportunity for discussions. But for now, the next few weeks involve us seeking to get people to support our party, and we'll see where the results landed towards the end of October.
And Minister, finally, on day one, presumably, if Shery's projections for the election outcome do come true in your favour, what would be your policy priorities? And are you concerned about getting New Zealand's fiscal books back in order?
Well, look, obviously, like all economies facing this 1 in 100-year shock, it's going to take time to reduce the deficit back down, and we have a track to keep debt under control and then coming down. But our priorities remain the recovery and rebuild from COVID-19, and that's a big program of infrastructure, of house building, of investment in our skills and into the productive sector as well. And we have a campaign worth of promises and commitments that we will have to implement. But New Zealanders are very much focused on, keeping in work, making sure that we continue to trade with the rest of the world and we get through this crisis. And, every country in the world is under pressure, but I'm confident about New Zealand's prospects.